Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack the mechanics of data identifiers and how they literally power global market transparency. Today, we're taking a really close look at the UTI architecture, and we'll focus specifically on how it harmonizes derivatives traceability and oversight across the entire financial industry. Let's jump right in.
All right, let's dive into this massive problem. Picture this. You have millions of data points flying across jurisdictions every single second. Now ask yourself, how on earth do authorities keep a watchful eye on it all? How do they make sure that a trade initiated in one country and booked in another doesn't just, disappear into the ether? It's an incredibly complex challenge, and it requires a deeply organized structural solution.
So here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover 5 parts. First, the global derivatives puzzle. Second, the trade-level identity key. Third, we'll bust some myths versus reality. Fourth, we'll look at cross-border harmonization. And finally, Section 5, combating financial crime.
Starting off with Section 1, the global derivatives puzzle and the sheer chaos of cross-border data.
Think back to the pre-UTI world for a second. We were dealing with an environment that is just extraordinarily complex, fundamentally cross-border, and highly data-intensive. When you have these vast amounts of trade data being generated continuously by different institutions, all using completely different internal systems, it's honestly like a chaotic group project where absolutely nobody is talking to each other. Maintaining any real level of market oversight becomes incredibly difficult for regulators.
And this is exactly where the system historically fractured. If regulators can't reliably match up 2 distinct reports and say, yes, these actually relate to the exact same transaction, the quality of their oversight weakens drastically. If counterparty A reports a trade one way and counterparty B reports the exact same trade using a completely different format, it's like having 2 witnesses describe the exact same event entirely differently. To a regulator, they look like 2 completely separate events. So without reliable matching, true supervisory visibility is essentially impossible.
Moving on to Section 2, the trade-level identity key, which is the absolute foundation of consistent reporting. So, enter the UTI. ESMA, that's the European Securities and Markets Authority, gives us this foundational definition through their EMIR refit guidance. This cements the Unique Trade Identifier as the essential hero that finally brings some order to all that chaos. Simply put, it's a unique code assigned to a reportable derivatives transaction so that both the counterparties as well as the trade repositories can identify the exact same trade consistently across all regulatory reporting.
I really love this analogy. Think of the UTI exactly like a tracking number on a global shipping package. If you order a package internationally, that singular tracking code is what allows the sender, the carrier, the customs agents, and of course you, the receiver, to know exactly where the item is at all times. Without it, the trade basically gets lost in the mail. The UTI is that critical trade-level identity key ensuring authorities can actively track the package from start to finish.
Just 1. That is the magic number here. Under EMIR refit, ESMA mandates that a pair of counterparties must use a specific UTI for exactly one single derivative. You absolutely cannot recycle it, and there is no way you can have multiple UTIs floating around for the same trade. This rigid one-to-one relationship is exactly what prevents those mismatched records and duplicated data from messing up the reporting chain.
Okay, Section 3, myths versus reality. Let's clear up what the UTI actually is, and maybe more importantly, what it isn't.
Here's the really crucial point. A UTI is never, and I mean never, just some arbitrary commercial label or a handy internal sticky note for a firm's convenience. It's not an internal booking reference. It is a strictly prescribed regulatory identifier. It exists primarily to support accurate trade reporting and ensure supervisory data quality.
The UK's Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, actually makes this absolutely crystal clear in their validation rules. They state uniqueness must be preserved, and the structure is prescribed. You can't just go and invent your own format. It doesn't work that way. Accurate trade reporting requires strict structural adherence so that everyone across the entire market is submitting data that fits perfectly together into one massive regulatory dataset.
All right, on to Section 4, cross-border harmonization and how we apply the global rules of engagement.
Because these derivatives markets are so intensely global, the rules governing them have to be too. So, global standard setters stepped in with the CPMI ISGO technical guidance. This was developed specifically to harmonize UTIs for over-the-counter or OTC derivatives across totally diverse jurisdictions. For example, the FCA's UK EMIR reporting explicitly bases its updated structure on this exact guidance. The whole goal here is global translation, ensuring regulators in completely different countries are speaking the exact same data language.
Now you might be wondering, when two counterparties trade, who actually generates this code? Well, the FCA lays out a very specific set of steps to prevent any conflicts. Step 1, the counterparties engage in the transaction. Step 2, they have to determine the generating entity by using what's called applicable waterfall logic, which is essentially a strict decision tree to figure out exactly who is responsible. This stops two counterparties from accidentally creating conflicting codes. And finally, step 3, the responsible entity generates the specific required ISO 23897 UTI.
And get this, the FCA dictates that even if a UTI is generated by a non-UK counterparty operating under a completely different reporting regime, that UTI must still align perfectly with UK EMIR formatting requirements. It literally does not matter where the code originates. It has to fit the prescribed structure perfectly so that data aggregation remains totally seamless on a global scale.
Finally, Section 5, Combating Financial Crime. Let's look at the ultimate real-world impact of all this harmonized data.
Now, we need to be really clear about something. The UTI isn't some magic bullet. It's not an anti-money laundering or sanctions control in and of itself. It's not going to automatically flag a sanctioned entity or stop money laundering on its own. However, it is the essential building block that authorities absolutely rely on to aggregate information, trace transactions, and actually see the broader, completely connected market picture.
By making every single transaction uniquely identifiable, the UTI directly powers a much wider control environment. It drives trade traceability. It enables highly accurate data reconciliation. It radically improves post-trade market transparency. And ultimately, it supports misconduct detection. It gives regulators the exact tools they need for supervisory review and post-trade reconstruction, giving them a real fighting chance against complex financial misconduct.
It's honestly fascinating how one standardized identifier can completely transform market oversight. So I'm going to leave you with this question to ponder regarding your own data oversight. Is your reporting chain truly traceable? I hope this explainer has demonstrated exactly why this single, highly structured identifier is so crucial for securing the integrity of the global derivatives market. Keep asking the right questions, and thank you so much for joining me today.